Hi everyone. As we have learned characteristics of sound waves, now I want to help you to understand well by using an example. Let us take an example. Remember, we are on characteristics of sound waves. Very interesting. You have understood very well. There are some characteristics. There are 4, remember. Now, let us take an example to understand very well this formula that we're talking about. A wave was produced by 60 Hertz of frequency and vibrates at a speed of 4 meters per second. Remember, in air, sound waves are produced by using the speed in normal way, 341 meters per second. That's standard. Then let us take an example. It vibrates at 4 meters per second. Don't you see that this sound wave, it is very low? Because in air, normally it is produced at 341 meters per second. Very interesting. Now, so what is the speed and the wavelength? What is the speed and the wavelength? Of course, when you are reading this question, which is very interesting, you may ask yourself, how can I proceed? Simple. Let us use the formula. Remember, in the previous lesson, we have said that speed is equal to wavelength divided by period, or wavelength times the frequency. Now, we have the speed, 4 meters per second. We have the frequency, 60 Hertz. Now they're asking us to find the period. When you are doing cross multiplication, the wavelength of a period, cross multiplication, this shows us that the period times the speed is equal to the wavelength. Very interesting. Speed times period is equal to the wavelength. So far, we don't have the period, but we have the frequency. Don't you remember that we have frequency is equal to 1 over period? Wow. So if it is 1 over period, to mean that frequency was equal to 60 Hertz, this is equal to 1 over period. If it is 1 over period, to mean that the period will be equal to 1 over 60 Hertz. So to mean the period will be equal to 1 over 60 seconds. That's the period. And remember, they have not asked us the period, but they asked us the speed. But as long as we have the period, it is better that you can take the wavelength divided by the period. So the speed is equal to wavelength over period, and we have the speed. It was equal to 4. It was equal to 4, which is equal to the wavelength divided by the period, which is 1 over 60. To mean 4 is equal to 60 times the wavelength. Very interesting. Applying this formula. Now the wavelength is equal to 4 over 60. Can I simplify? Of course, yes. Let us simplify. This is equal to 2 over 30. Still you can simplify. That is equal to 1 over 15 meters. So far, now we have the wavelength. Okay, and as the wavelength, very interesting. But also we have the speed. There is no need of calculation of that speed. In the question it was given, speed is equal to 4 meters per second. That's the reason why when you are reading a physics question, first understand the data. Because in the data, they may be asking you something which is the question. So the speed was equal to 4 meters per second. Very interesting. So now this is not going to consume our time. Let's take another example to see whether we can fix these formulas. Remember, we are on characteristics of sound waves. Let us do that because it is disturbing us. So, example number 2. What is the frequency of a radio station with 60 megahertz and moves with a speed of 3 kilometers. Find also the wavelength. For that sound wave. Very interesting. What is the frequency of a radio station? All of us, we are familiar with radio stations. With 60 megahertz, what is that? That's the frequency. Remember, hertz is the sign of the frequency. Mega, what is mega? Let us remember, 1 mega is equal to 10 power 6. To mean the frequency that we have is 60 times 10 to power 6 hertz. What else? We have also the speed. That's per second. Speed is equal to 30 kilometers per second. It is very fast. So let us use the formula. The speed was equal to wavelength divided by the period. Okay. Now we have the speed. Can we find the wavelength? But we don't have the period. But very easy and very interesting because the frequency is equal to 1 over period. So we have 60 times 10 to the power 6, which is equal to 1 over period. To mean the period will be equal to 1 over 60 times 10 to the power 6. This is equal to 1 over 60, then times 10 to the power negative 6 seconds. Remember, we are using the property of powers. That's the reason why 10 to the power 6 was here. When it moves up, it will become 10 to the power negative 6. Don't be confused. Now, let us go to the period. So the period will be equal to wavelength divided by speed. If you have the period and you don't have the wavelength, but we have the speed. Is it possible to find this period? The answer is no. Now, let us see how we can first find the wavelength. The wavelength will be equal to the speed times the period. Okay? So this is equal to 3 kilometers per second, that is 3,000 meters per second, times the period. We have seen that the period is equal to 1/60 times 10 to the power negative 6. Am I allowed to simplify? The answer is yes. Let me simplify by 60. Now, here you will get 5. That is to mean that is 50 times 10 to the power negative 6 meters. That's the wavelength. Now, if I have the wavelength, now am I allowed to know the period? So far we have found the period. We have the speed. Very interesting. So we have the period, we have the wavelength, and we have the speed. Hopeful, now we are able to link these 4 characteristics of sound waves. Remember, we have the wavelength, we have the speed, we have the period, and we have the frequency. So as we have said that the speed is equal to wavelength divided by the period, and remember the speed is equal to 3,000 kilometers per second, to mean that is 3,000 times 1,000 because it is 1 kilometer then per second. Now you can write 3,000 meter per second is equal to the wavelength divided by the period. Okay, so as the frequency is equal to 60 hertz, kilohertz, that's 60,000 hertz. Okay, so the period is equal to 1 over frequency, which is equal to 1 over 60. Then if it is kilohertz, now that is 10 to the power 3. What I want to show you, because in some questions you'll be found in kilohertz, but in our question was megahertz. Megahertz, that is 10 to the power 6. That's the reason why we are using 10 to the power 6. So allow me to thank you everyone, because we have a YouTube channel that you can find our reasons specifically for this senior 6 that you have on YouTube channel, that is ikaramu.tv, but also on our website. It is very easy and very interesting. Please visit this website, that is www.ubumenyi.net. Please don't hesitate to ask me any question. As instructor, I'm ready to help you, and it will be grateful to me to help you and to feel that you're understanding this content. Remember, we are dealing with connecting 4 characteristics of sound waves. Thank you very much. See you.